Solomon moved his wife, Pharaoh's daughter, from the city of David to the new palace he had built for her. He said, "My wife must not live in King David's palace, for the ark of the Lord has been there, and it is holy ground." And so at least at this point in Solomon's reign as king, he has everything set up pretty much just as David described, including the priests and Levites' duties, the temple and the way it was built. Pretty much anything that was assumed to be within the agreement between God and David is being followed at this point. With the slight possible exception of Solomon having a foreign wife, but again, at least he was cognizant enough of that maybe not exactly being what God wanted, to have her live outside of David's old palace where the Ark of the Lord had been. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Alright, 2 Chronicles chapter 8. So this comes right after, Solomon has built the temple and dedicated it to the Lord. And then God has told him, in response to a slightly earlier prayer of his, God told Solomon that, yes, I'm granting your request. This place will be dedicated as the place to worship me, the Lord your God. And, in future generations, even if the people turn away from me and they pray, I think there it specifically said in this place, but Solomon had even mentioned just praying towards the temple. So I think that's implied that that's included as well. But anyway, God says, all right, even after the people turn away, if they come back and pray toward the temple, they sincerely, that was sincere and seriously together. Anyway, if they sincerely turn back to me and pray, then I will answer them and help them because they're turning back to me earnestly. So God basically just confirmed that, yes, what you have prayed, Solomon, will happen as long as you continue to follow me. And that's anyway. Old Testament, that's kind of the situation you have, where it's there's a lot for the broader kingdom of Israel and God's people that hinges on whether or not they follow and worship the Lord. So after that, we get to this chapter. So let's hop in and see what we got here. 2 Chronicles, chapter 8. It took Solomon 20 years to build the Lord's temple and his own royal palace. At the end of that time, Solomon turned his attention to rebuilding the towns that King Hiram had given him, and he settled Israelites in them. Solomon also fought against the town of Hamath-Zobah and conquered it. He rebuilt Tadmor in the wilderness and built towns in the region of Hamath as supply centers. He fortified the towns of Upper Beth-horon and Lower Beth-horon, rebuilding their walls and installing barred gates. He also rebuilt Baaleth and other supply centers and constructed towns where his chariots and horses could be stationed. He built everything he desired in Jerusalem and Lebanon and throughout his entire realm. Okay, pausing there for a sec. So there were, I guess, as part of the agreement between Solomon and King Hiram, Solomon had a bunch of goods that he was supplying King Hiram, a bunch of food and olive oil and things like that, in exchange for some workers to help with building the temple and the palace. along with the resources that might be needed, especially wood, cedars from a particular place. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of it. From Lebanon, I think. And then, I guess amongst that, there were towns given from King Hiram to Solomon. Here says Huram there, but that's variant spelling. It's, it's one letter off, and ancient Hebrew is a very different language. But so, now that the temple has been built, Solomon wants to settle these new towns that he's been given. And if I recall correctly, they weren't necessarily like, the most fabulous towns out there. They were not like, real rich in resources or even like very developed or anything like that. But now Solomon has ownership of these towns, and he's like, okay, might as well make use of them. So, settling people there, building stuff in other towns, now that the temple's done, pretty much further fortifying, places within his kingdom, and also seems like kind of maybe building infrastructure as well, building defenses, with the mention of chariots and horses for sure. So yeah, with the temple and the palace being done after 20 years, he has moved on to other construction projects to further bolster his kingdom. Note there, chariots and horses. It could be read and charioteers rather than horses. I mean, you need charioteers for the chariots as well. The horses were, like, all three of those were probably needed for the chariots. So if you wanted to station chariots anywhere in particular, you gotta have people to run those. And horses to actually pull them. Anyway. Okay. On to verse 7. There were still some people living in the land who were not Israelites, including the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These were descendants of the nations whom the people of Israel had not destroyed. So Solomon conscripted them for his labor force, and they serve as forced laborers to this day, meaning the day of original writing, not today. But Solomon did not conscript any of the Israelites for his labor force. Instead, he assigned them to serve as fighting men, officers in his army, commanders of his chariots, and charioteers. King Solomon appointed 250 of them to supervise the people. Solomon moved his wife, Pharaoh's daughter, from the city of David to the new palace he had built for her. He said, "My wife must not live in King David's palace, for the ark of the Lord has been there, and it is holy ground." Okay. Gonna pause there for a little bit. So, all these people up here that I guess I think they were in land that the Israelites had conquered, but the people themselves from these different groups, nations, tribes, something to that effect, were still living there. They weren't completely wiped out. And if you're going to have people from other nations, I guess, living in your kingdom, like, I mean, they're going to be working in some way or another anyway. I get, this is one of those things where I'm not gonna say that it was right to have them as the labor force, but like, hey, they weren't all dead, and I guess maybe that was I wouldn't say there was an agreement or anything like that made, but maybe that was sort of the notion, was like, all right, well, a bunch of your people have died, but you're still alive. I don't necessarily want to kill you all now. So let's put you to work. And I mean, they probably would have paid taxes and such. Shoot. Let's bring this into modern day context. A lot of people in America, when it comes to illegal immigrants, are, some of them just don't want any immigrants in this country, period. I disagree with that notion entirely. But, if you're going to have immigrants from other countries in your own country, in your land, you want them to work for what they get. So, it's better that than giving them a free ride or just going to the other extreme and outright killing them. I mean, I guess they could potentially have been exiled, but anyway. There's a whole lot of nuance to different situations, so I'm not going to try to make too much of a comparison here. But it certainly wouldn't have made sense for Solomon to use the foreigners as the army, as the fighting force for his kingdom, because that would give them a real easy way to turn around and, betray the kingdom, try to, weaken the ones who conquered them. Anywho, I feel like I've gone on a major tangent. So, then Solomon moved his wife to a new palace, which I guess is the palace that was built along with the temple, because that's a different palace than the one David was in, so that's not where the Ark of the Covenant has been. And since it was Pharaoh's daughter, he at least cared enough to be like, okay, she's Pharaoh's daughter, she's a foreigner, let's not have her on what's considered holy ground. Which, I guess there was a time when the Ark was in King David's palace before him, and so because of that, that place was considered holy ground. Anyway, okay. Let's move along. Verse 12. Then Solomon presented burnt offerings to the Lord on the altar he had built for him in front of the entry room of the temple. He offered the sacrifices for the Sabbaths, the new moon festivals, and the 3 annual festivals, the Passover celebration, the Festival of Harvest, and the Festival of Shelters, as Moses had commanded. In assigning the priests to their duties, Solomon followed the regulations of his father David. He also assigned the Levites to lead the people in praise and to assist the priests in their daily duties. And he assigned the gatekeepers to their gates by their divisions, following the commands of David, the man of God. Solomon did not deviate in any way from David's commands concerning the priests and Levites and the treasuries. So Solomon made sure that all the work related to building the temple of the Lord was carried out, from the day its foundation was laid to the day of its completion. Might as well wrap up the chapter. Later, Solomon went to Ezion-Geber and Elath, ports along the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. Hiram sent him ships commanded by his own officers and manned by experienced crews of sailors. These ships sailed to Ophir with Solomon's men and brought back to Solomon almost 17 tons of gold. So I guess there was an agreement made related to that too. If it was mentioned in detail, I apologize for forgetting all the details therein, But yeah, King Hiram had a really good relationship with David, Solomon's father. So, like, when Solomon wanted to continue that, Hiram's like, sure, yeah, things have been great. Let's trade. Let's, get some agreements going with each other here and mutually benefit each other. So, yeah, so Solomon, it says he presented burnt offerings on the altar he had built. No surprise there, really. So this was like, Sabbaths were kind of like the weekly things. The new moon festivals were probably about monthly. And then there was the 3 big yearly festivals. Festival of Shelters, I think, was mentioned last chapter. Festival of the Harvest, or of Weeks, is mentioned as the other big one, along with the Passover. And so at least at this point in Solomon's reign as king, he has everything set up pretty much just as David described, including the priests and Levites' duties, the temple and the way it was built, and yeah, pretty much anything that was assumed to be within the agreement between God and David is being followed at this point, with the slight possible exception of Solomon having a foreign wife. But again, at least he was cognizant enough of that maybe not exactly being what God wanted, to have her live outside of David's old palace where the Ark of the Lord had been. But it says he did not deviate from David's commands concerning the priests and Levites and the treasuries. Treasuries too, that's an important part. Because, that's the money. So yeah. Temple was built, everything's set up. And then they're still also, engaged in trade deals, getting more gold and riches and possibly resources of other kinds. So Solomon went to these places. That comes from the Greek. Hebrew reads Eloth rather than Elath. But it's considered a variant spelling. It's one letter off. Same place is meant in either case, I'm sure. And those were ports along the shore of the Red Sea, as it's mentioned in 1 Kings 9. So that might be where this kind of stuff was mentioned earlier. So I mentioned 1 Kings last chapter, I think, as a place where, we could read more details on that, and seems like I was right. Hebrew just says the sea instead of the Red Sea. Now, normally when they mentioned the sea, it was talking about the Mediterranean Sea, because that was the big sea near them. But I assume, rough locations of these places are known, and those were along the Red Sea instead. So Solomon's men brought back almost 17 tons. Hebrew says 450 talents of gold. Which, I mean, that's kind of a lot. But, yeah. So that pretty much means the wealth and prosperity of the Kingdom of Israel is continuing to build after they've made the temple and started establishing other things and solidifying defenses and doing all sorts of other stuff. Basically, everything you could think of is going well for the Kingdom of Israel at this point. And that's where we leave things off for 2 Chronicles chapter 8, I guess. Okay, so 2 Chronicles 8 basically boils down to, here's all the good stuff, or most of the good stuff that Solomon was able to do, other than all the temple building and all that. A bunch of the good stuff that Solomon was able to do, while presumably, at least for the most part, following God's commands. So, again, another indication to the exiles that, hey, things went well while we followed God. So, yeah. I would hope, I mean, it's not like it's been outright stated as many times as I've kind of been implying that it's been stated, but like, I would hope the people back then would have understood by this point that, yeah, things went well when we followed God, things went poorly when we didn't. We therefore should make sure that we're following God. And yeah, that's kind of where things leave off for chapter 8. There might be actually even more along a similar line, with things going well for Solomon looking ahead, but we'll get to that in probably the next couple of chapters. So, anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Look down in the description for links to social media pages, my Discord server, my supporter page. Every way you could possibly keep up with what I'm doing and interact online is down in there. And below that, you can leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section with things related to this chapter, the Bible in general, or really pretty much anything that you've got. So, yeah. I hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video, but whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.